From the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Writers Talk. I'm Doug Dangler. Dr. Joseph Steinmetz is the OSU Vice Provost for Arts and Humanities and Executive Dean of Arts and Humanities. He's held similar positions at the University of Kansas and Indiana University, as well as being a distinguished professor of psychological and brain sciences. He was recognized in 1996 by the National Academy of Sciences for his contribution to the fields of experimental psychology and neuroscience. He is a fellow of the American Psychological Society and the Society of Experimental Psychologists, and received the Gantt Medal from the Pavlovian Society for career research contributions. Welcome to Writers Talk, Dr. Steinmetz.
It's great to be here, Doug.
Great. Tell me about your background as a writer. What were you like as an undergraduate writer?
Well, truth be told, I was a terrible writer as an undergraduate, and I think it wasn't until I got to graduate school that I really improved my writing dramatically. It was either do that or get out. I was basically told that by my graduate advisor at one point, and I really, at that time, thought I was pretty inexperienced in writing, especially scientific writing.
Okay. What was it that helped you to learn how to be a writer as you got into it? Was it working with one particular person or just reading more in the field?
I think it's really a combination of two things. First of all, my mentor in graduate school was a guy by the name of Michael Patterson, who is a fantastic writer, by the way, himself. Very demanding, very particular. So my first few efforts of writing for him really were literally returned with big red X's written across big portions of my manuscripts. So every once in a while there was a sentence or two that he liked in it, but it was really working carefully with him in showing me what was wrong with my writing that improved it. And I think if that, aside from him, perhaps the biggest factor was just the experience of writing itself. I needed to do much more of it than I had to that date, and so just doing many drafts, many different kinds of writing for him, I think in the end was as helpful as any of the feedback that I got from him.
Okay. So that's you as an undergrad, and as you progressed in your career, you were the editor-in-chief of Behavioral and Cognitive Neuroscience Reviews and Integrative Physiological and Behavioral Science journals. So you started giving that kind of advice to other people, the kind that you received. What kind of advice do you give to your reviewers for journals in order to have them work with people on their writing?
Well, being the editor of a scientific journal is interesting in the sense that you have two things that you're really taking a look at in manuscripts or asking reviewers to content. And one is the scientific content of the paper itself. That has really little to do with writing. So that's things like how good is the science that's there, by how well are the experiments designed, how well are the results analyzed and then presented in graphical form as well as the written form. All that is I think, the major things that reviewers look at. But interestingly, a big part of comments that you always go back is the manner in which these results in this paper is presented. So there are often comments that are there from reviewers, encouraged by editors like myself, is take a look at the succinctness of the presentation and the manner in which the paper is organized, etc. So I think the comments from reviewers would really revolve around organization of the paper, clarity, succinctness, and I think those are all hallmarks of writing for scientific journals.
Okay. Tell me, when you're working with your journals and working with people, how far can you go if the science is good? How much are you able to work with somebody who's writing has issues? I used to work at a journal in town, the Chemical Abstracts. Probably shouldn't say the name, but I used to work there, and there were a lot of rules about what happened by the time we saw the manuscript, and I just did line editing. But I'm curious about what kinds of typical feedback you might see about something like about the writing if the science was good.
It's generally written, the feedback about writing, in very general terms, such as you might tell a writer, an author of a paper, you know, the introduction section has everything there to present the literature, but it sort of meanders around, and you don't present it in a logical format.
Like a chronological format.
Yeah, and we may give examples as editors at that level of how to represent that information better. I really think a lot of that kind of editing, though, goes on after the review process is done at the editor's office. So in most of the journals that I've been associated, there's proofreaders and editorial staff beyond the initial review that really clean up the papers, make them more readable, et cetera. So I think that's where most of that feedback goes on.
Right. And you had mentioned the hallmarks of good writing, good academic writing. What are some of the hallmarks that you're really looking for? And this is for people that are trying to publish in a journal or in other areas of academics. What are you really like?
That's a great question. And my role right now is that as a publisher or as a writer of journal articles, since I'm not editing journals currently, I still work a great deal with graduate students and undergraduates and postdocs and research scientists who work for me in editing papers they're writing or that we're co-authoring. And in fact, almost 95% of the work I do are co-authored efforts with other people. So most of my feedback now is directly with my co-authors, talking to them about ways that I see this paper shaping up. And as senior author on most of the work, 100% of it essentially, in the end, I think I have final say in how the paper shapes up. So the advice that I'm giving are to the co-authors, not a much more personal level, by the way, much more direct than you can be as an editor.
So you say, I want this changed, and because I don't like it for X reason.
That's right. Specific. And what I hammer on is sort of looking at the whole product, not sections of the paper. And I have experience with a lot of my co-authors in the past that want to work on the paper section at a time. Typically, scientific papers have an abstract and an introduction and a methods section and a results section, a discussion and references, and these are all supposed to be separate sections. But a big deal for me is that they make a whole that is good. And so, for one thing, I won't look at sections at a time in paper. I really demand that the whole paper be presented in even an early draft format so I can see where my co-authors are headed with things. So mainly my comments are in what I really hammer on is making sure collectively that paper is organized in sending the overall statement and message that we want about the experiment or the theory that we're advancing at that time.